So, have you ever had one of those days? So, I'm talking about the day where it seems like one thing after another just doesn't seem to go right. And it's like statistically unlikely that so many things would get thrown off and go sideways in the same day. If you've had one of those days, this video is for you. I'm Deborah, and this is where I share my reflections, insights, lessons, and experiences on spirituality, personal growth, and what that looks like in midlife. Um, so, I want to talk about how to deal with one of those days today. And the reason I'm making this video is because I recently had one of those days. And it sucked hard. Like it really did. And I got through it. And honestly, really from just experiences, the experience of having so many of those days over the decades, and where I am spiritually and on my personal growth path, I've learned how to handle it differently. Because it's not that hard for one of those days to turn into one of those weeks if we let it. I know everything's not within our control. I know that things happen that are unfair. Life does throw us curveballs, but we can choose how to respond. So today I just want to talk about how to deal with it, how to deal when you're having one of those days. And I know from experience, I just had one of those days. It was like a couple days ago. Yeah, if you're having one of those days, just know that you're not alone. We all have them. I don't care how spiritual you are, how evolved you are, how focused on the growth mindset you are. Sometimes you have one of those days. And so I'm making this video to share how I've dealt with it. And I would love to hear how you have dealt with it, what you've learned about different ways to deal with it, different strategies. And I'm going to share what I did recently to help myself through one of those days. Um, so I recently had a day. Well, actually, let's start with first of all, one of those days, the catalyst for one of those days could be many things, right? It can be internal circumstances, could be you wake up in a bad mood, you're sick, you don't feel good, just not in the mood for it today. Um, so your internal state can certainly precipitate one of those days. And or it can be your external circumstances. I mean, life does actually throw us curveballs. Sometimes things don't go right or the way that we expected. And sometimes that happens multiple times in a day. And that's one of those days. So, my first tip for dealing with one of those days is to not claim and label it as a bad day, a terrible day, the worst day. And I know it's hard not to do. I know that you're only human, but resist the temptation to just label it a bad day. So, what I have noticed that I used to do was, one thing goes haywire. All right. Second thing, third thing, okay, it's a bad day. Today is officially a bad day. But what I've learned over the years is that, especially from a mindset perspective, and how I want to frame my day and my mindset and how I want to approach the things that happen, labeling it as a bad day or a terrible day is definitely not going to help you. What it does is puts you more into that energy of finding a fault and expecting the next thing to go wrong. So what I like to do is I'll say it is one of those days because I'm not trying to bypass anything. I'm a spiritual person. I'm like working on my personal growth, but sometimes there are days like that. And instead of labeling it as something automatically negative, I like to come up with different ways to label it. which might sound like I'm playing a game with myself, and I kind of am, because that's what I find that I need to do to um to make to help support myself, to have like a conscious response to what's happening. So I like to say, okay, it's one of those days. Or, okay, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that. So I'm not trying to bypass it. I think it's important to acknowledge, like, just acknowledge your reality. Like, yeah, some days are really hard, some days are full of challenges. Um, so, yeah, that's the first thing I would say is just do your best, especially when you're in the moment. I will say, like, in retrospect, like I started this video by saying it sucked when I had one of those days. It did suck. Um, but I kind of like didn't let myself go all the way there while it was happening, because as far as like labeling it as, this day sucks, because I just knew, because I know myself and I know how my mind works. Once I did that, it wasn't going to help me. It was not going to help me to get through the day, to just decide that this was a sucky day. So, afterwards in your like forensic assessment, your post game like assessment, you can call it what you will. But in the moment, you want to try to keep a positive or at least neutral mindset about it. So that's the first thing I do is I'm just like, I acknowledge, okay, this is one of those days. Okay. Um, the next thing I would suggest is just, do what you can to avoid getting in your head and spiraling. Again, I speak from experience, because in the past, when I would have one of those days, I would get in my head about it, like, okay, it's like that today, huh? And so then I would kind of move into a sense of anxiety and anticipation of what's the next bad thing that's going to happen. And so I was already on edge, already feeling anxious, and just already framing every event negatively, like really waiting for the other shoe to drop with every event and circumstance that would transpire throughout the day. And again, that didn't help. It really doesn't help. I mean, if you're trying to get through the day, starting to um starting to anticipate the worst is really not going to help you. And what I have found is when I've done it, I would just spiral. Like, spiral in the sense that, okay, three things in a row have not gone my way. Unexpectedly, like unexpected challenges. And I would just start really thinking negatively, ruminating. So then even the little things that weren't going my way, um, they would start to seem much bigger than they actually were. And I would have a hard time like coping and dealing with all of it. So I would say avoid spiraling. And a lot of that does have to do with self talk. So there's how you frame the day, but then there's also just your self talk about the day, and doing your best not to get into a place of anticipating the worst. And so, what I've done for myself, which is not easy to do because I know it's real world, but I'll just tell you what I did recently is because I felt myself starting to get flustered. And I knew that once I get flustered, it's really easy for that to turn into like a cascade of unwanted events. Because once I get flustered, then I start to make, mistakes or miss things and think, differently about things. And so this my recent day like this happened at work, and started off as a normal day, and I was in a good mood and everything. And then I made a simple mistake that I was like, this is such a simple mistake. Why did I make this mistake? And then I made the next one. And then I made the third one. And then I started to get a little panicky, like, oh gosh, like what's wrong with me today? I will say that's one of the things that has come up for me in the past. I don't know if it's come up for you, but where you when things start to go sideways, I would ask, what did I do wrong? Like I would think like, what did I do today? Did I not do something right? Why is this happening? And the first, I just want to say, do not blame yourself. It's just a part of human life. Like, as much, everything is energetic. And just like there's high tide and low tide, there's sunny days and cloudy days, there's days where you're tired and days where you feel energetic. There's going to be some days that everything goes smoothly, and that's wonderful. And then there's going to be some days where you get some unwanted surprises. So, so I just want to remind you not to blame yourself. There's nobody to blame. It's just like the weather changing, there's just different energy, different times. And sometimes it is one of those days. That's a real thing. And I also want to say that I know, like, from the highbrow spiritual perspective, one might think, well, we shouldn't even acknowledge, and maybe there are people that think this, that you shouldn't even acknowledge that it's one of those days because that's just calling in that energy. And I get that. But I'm not into denying reality. I think we can take a neutral or even positive perspective, even like just curious. Just take a curious perspective about things and events. But I don't want to bypass it because it's also like bypassing and trying to deny your feelings because there's a reason you feel like it's one of those days because things are coming up, feelings are coming up. So I'm not into pretending it's not happening, pretending that, five things in a row didn't go wrong. Like, there's no need to pretend that that's not happening. That doesn't make you more spiritual. It's okay to acknowledge it and then to work with it, so we don't have to get stuck there. But I think it's really helpful to acknowledge it. Getting back to how to deal with one of those days, I would say do your best to avoid spiraling. Like I said, I try to take a curious or neutral perspective to how things evolve and just like notice, like, oh, this is the third thing. Okay. And I might be biting my lip and I might be gritting my teeth, but it depends on the day. But I try to like not get into that state of mind where I get flustered and I'm anticipating the worst from everything that happens because I have found that really does create that. And so when I was having this day at work recently, uh, by the time of the third like thing happened, I was like, okay, all right. I was like, I started to get flustered and I was like, okay, I know that if I get flustered, this isn't going to go well. Like I was at the point where I felt like, you ever have those days where you just like want to throw your hands up and run out of the room? Like that's what I wanted to do. But I was at work and I couldn't do that. So I did something else. I decided to take a bathroom break. And I went to the bathroom and I went to one of the stalls, closed the door, and I stood there and I meditated. And it wasn't very long. I don't think meditation has to be long. I think also the more that you meditate, the easier it is for you to connect to that space. Even though I was having all different kinds of emotions that were coming up because things weren't going the way I wanted them to, I got in that stall and I closed my eyes and I just connected. And for me, that's like connecting to the space and the energy around me. And honestly, like I prayed. I asked God and my spirit guides for help. I was like, I need help today. Please help me to remain calm, to be at peace, and to have clarity so that I can move through this day with peace and clarity and maintain the most positive energy I can. And then I do a visualization where I do imagine golden light coming down because it's so cleansing and comforting and warm and glowy for me. And it comes through my crown and goes through my body, through each chakra, and just fills me with light. And I definitely feel better afterwards. Like everything is energy and intention is energy. So just the act of doing that meditation brings in positive energy, helps me to reset myself to the extent that's possible in the middle of everything that happened. So after my little bathroom break, which was probably maybe 3 to 5 minutes, I went back to my desk. And the next thing I did, which I highly suggest if you can, if you have a safe space to do it in, which is to just like acknowledge to someone that it's one of those days. And so I actually told a couple of my coworkers that were nearby, I said, you know what? I think I'm having one of those days and my brain is melty. And my brain was melty. That's why I was making the mistakes I was. Like, some days you're just off. And that was what was happening to me. And so the catalyst for that day was on some level quite internal, because my internal state made it so that things were just more challenging for me, were harder. Um, and it seems like such a small thing, but I got such relief from just acknowledging it to people around me. I would say phone a friend if you can. I know not all workplaces it's safe to, even people you may not feel safe to be vulnerable to share that, which is a shame, but I get it. There are different atmospheres in different workplaces. Phone a friend if you can, call someone on your lunchtime, text somebody. And if there is no one you could talk to, just witness it for yourself. Like, witness yourself and just acknowledge, you know what? I'm feeling like I'm not at my best today. This is not going the way I wanted. And I'm going to be okay. Because you are going to be okay. Like, you're going to get through it. Um, but I think it helps to just acknowledge it. Like I said, I'm not into bypassing. I think we have to acknowledge the full range of human emotions, experiences, mindsets. We're not going to be all rainbows and lollipops all the time. Um, and it's good to acknowledge it. We just don't have to stay stuck there. Okay. And I think that's part of where some people in the spiritual and personal growth community come from, where it's like, you know, we're afraid to like acknowledge something isn't going quite right or the way that we want, because we're afraid that that's just us calling in negative energy. But we have to acknowledge the reality of our feelings and experiences. There's no, I personally don't find there's anything productive about being in complete denial about what you actually feel. Like, that doesn't help. So anyway, I shared that with some of my coworkers, and I felt better because I think I felt like I was off the hook. Like, I let them know that I'm not at my best today, and that allowed me to just like relax. Like, okay, like almost like I didn't have to like prove anything to anyone. And I don't know that I normally think that. I mean, I guess we all do on some level, right? Like, you want to be seen as competent at work. I want to be seen as competent at work. So acknowledging that I'm having one of those days and, my brain is melted is being vulnerable, but it's also like letting myself off the hook. Like, okay, it's okay. Relax. I don't gotta pretend that I got it all together when I'm not feeling that today, So that felt good. And then the final thing I would say, as far as how to deal with one of those days, is when you do get the chance, and that's what I did when it happened. I did run out the building when I could. I mean, I didn't literally run, but I was done. I was done. I made it through the day. I thank God I didn't spiral, because I was really conscious and intentional about not letting my thoughts spiral, because I'm like, that's just going to get me circling the drain and it's not going to be good. So, but when I finally left work, I was like, you know what? I had things I planned to do. I was going to run some errands. I was going to be productive. And I was just like, nope. I was like, to this day, like, took my reserves. I like reached my threshold for stress on that day. And I was just like, I've given myself a pass. I decided to just take things off my to-do list for the rest of that day. I realized, like, this is not the time for me to go run my errands and do my to-do list and be productive because I just don't have it in me. And I was also aware that if I tried to push myself, even though those things were technically like unrelated to what had happened earlier in the day, I just felt like I was going to be operating on fumes with no like reserve to from which to be not only clear thinking but like resilient. I just had to acknowledge like I don't need to push myself to do more today. I think I've had enough. So I came home, I made a really nice meal for myself, and I laid in bed and I never get to watch TV. I don't really have a TV, but I watched some interesting, like cool spiritual videos on my laptop. And that was it. Like, just take care of yourself because if you made it through the day, you deserve a freaking medal. You know, if you survived without having a total breakdown, throwing something across the room, or screaming at someone, then you did great. And just nurture yourself, do something really great for yourself. And honestly, for me, especially at this point in my life, when I was younger, it'd be like, I don't know, go for drinks, happy hour, do something. At this point in my life, the most like nurturing self care thing I could do for myself is to like take it easy, like have a slow, calm evening where I make as few demands of myself as possible. I mean, I took a shower and I did cook just because I do enjoy cooking, but that was it. And actually, I cooked hot dogs. So that's not even like real cooking. And I do like, there's these organic grass fed hot dogs I love. And that was it. And sometimes that's what you got to do. Just take care of yourself. Don't feel like you have to be Superman or Superwoman all the time because having one of those days is normal, is part of the human experience. Yet somehow you need to like get through it and get to the point where you can nurture yourself. And I will say that one of the things that happened after that day, the next day, I did wake up with a little bit of anxiety, anticipation, like, oh my God, is this going to be another one of those days? And I just had to nip that in the bud. I was like, I really consciously talked to myself and just was like aware that I can't think like that. You know, I know some people don't like the word can't, but I was like, it's not going to serve me to be in anticipation of, is this going to be another one of those days? Because then that is definitely what I would create. So I very consciously like reframed it like that was that day today. It's a fresh day. It's a new start. I don't have to think about that. That was the other day. I can start with fresh new energy today. So I just wanted to share that. And I would love to hear from you. How do you deal when you have one of those days? What do you do? What do you do to take care of yourself at the end of that day? Any strategies that you use to get through that when it's happening in real time? If this video resonated with you, if you got something from this, please like, subscribe, and share the video. And I can't wait to talk to you again. Thank you for watching.